Can you explain what organ donation is and why is it important?
When the organs in the body fail, they can be replaced, and that's the only treatment which is going to be effective.
How many people are currently on the waiting list for a transplant?
The waiting list keeps on changing because of the availability of organs.
Why do we find that kidney is one of the major organs that people need transplant?
Kidney is very easy to transplant as well. For living organ donation, the only two things which can be transplanted are one kidney or half of it.
What are some of the most common myths and misconceptions you think people have which stops them from donating their organs?
Organs can be transplanted even when you are old, as long as they are working. Organs will not be taken for transplantation if families say no. If somebody has got blood group A and the donor organ has got blood group B, it will not be compatible. The number of organs which can be donated are phenomenal.
Welcome back to Unbroken, My Story with Tisha. Today's episode is incredibly important. We are talking about organ donation, a topic many of us have heard about, but one we often misunderstand or even avoid. Behind every statistic is a real person, and behind every hesitation is a story shaped by culture, fear, or myth. To guide us through the facts and the human realities, I'm joined by Dr. Satya Sharma. Dr. Sharma served as a general medical practitioner for 3 decades, was awarded an MBE in 2011, and received a fellowship of the British Medical Association in 2014 for extraordinary services. He was also appointed Deputy Lieutenant of the West Midlands and honoured with the Global Indian Excellence Award. For the past 3 decades, Dr. Sharma has worked voluntarily to support and standardise organ donation guidelines across Commonwealth countries, a mission with the potential to benefit 2.3 billion people. This conversation is about facts, compassion, and the life-changing impact of saying yes to organ donation. Let's get into it. Dr. Sharma, thank you so much for being here today. Let's start with the basics. Can you explain what organ donation is and why is it important?
Thank you for having me. It's a unique opportunity to be able to explain organ donation, not a very popularly or commonly talked about subject, but nevertheless so important, particularly for those people who are affected. So if you imagine somebody needs an organ, it's not the person alone, it's the family and even friends are affected to a large stage. So what is organ donation? The answer is very simple. When the organs in the body fail, they can be replaced, and that's the only treatment which is going to be effective. Many times when they start failing, some of the drugs can really help, and they do. But when the organs have failed badly, then the treatment is replacing the organs with healthy organs. That is what organ donation is.
So what happens if you don't replace these organs?
Then that person will unfortunately die. Because you imagine kidney or liver or lungs or heart. If they fail and they cannot be replaced, they've gone beyond this stage of repair, then that person's life is in danger and the life is going to be shortened and sadly they'll pass away.
How many people are currently on the waiting list for a transplant?
Now then, that's a very pertinent question. As far as waiting is concerned, basically the waiting list keeps on changing because of the availability of organs. So whatever numbers we say today are probably not going to be relevant in 2 weeks, 4 weeks time, or even 6 months time.
Okay.
Because the numbers do keep on changing. At present, there are 8,200 people who are on the waiting list for a transplant. For kidney, it's even larger number. Largest number is for kidney because people do need the kidney transplantation. The National Kidney Foundation says that right now over 72,000 people in UK are living with a kidney transplant or on dialysis. There is a difference. The people who are on dialysis, they are given the choice. And many times they don't take the choice of having an organ transplant because somehow they believe that if I have organ transplant, I may not survive. At least on dialysis, I'm surviving. So it's a large number. Out of 72,000, many will qualify for organ transplant. The number who qualify keeps on increasing every year because the technology is improving. More people are being put on waiting lists for organ transplant. So out of 8,200, sadly, about a quarter or 1/3 will pass away without getting an organ because the demand is higher and the supply is not enough.
Why do we find that kidney is one of the major organs that people need transplant for?
Well, there are two reasons. One is that the kidney disease itself is very common. So that is what makes kidney to be transplanted as one of the organs. But the other thing is kidney is very easy to transplant as well. So people know about kidney, they are happy to donate kidney. And God has made two kidneys in each body. If you give one kidney, you can survive. You can survive with one. It's not the case with heart because there's only one heart.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if you give half of liver, the liver grows in both recipient and the donating person, and both can live with
And
half the liver.
That's the only organ that will regenerate.
That's correct. That's the only organ which will regenerate. And it's interesting that organ donation is of two types, living and deceased. For living organ donation, the only two things which can be transplanted are one kidney or half of liver. The rest of the organs are only after death. For example, after death, you can transplant heart.
Yeah.
You can also transplant lungs.
Yeah.
You can transplant pancreas, intestine, and the list is increasing as the technology keeps on improving. You can also transplant uterus, but we'll talk about that a bit later.
Okay, brilliant. So I think one of the biggest barriers is probably misunderstandings. What are some of the most common myths and misconceptions you think people have which stops them from donating their organs?
Very good question. I must say that that's one of the areas of my expertise because we go and talk about organ donation in teams, and a team goes for a reason, which I can explain in a minute. Basically, there are lots and lots of people who are under misconceptions and they have myths. One is age. If I'm old, my organs are not going to be useful to anybody. Now, what is old? When do you become old? Do you call yourself old if you are over 50, 60, 70, 80? The oldest organ donor was 84 and the oldest recipient was 103. People don't know this, so they keep on asking, oh, I'm too old. It's very interesting that the organs can be transplanted even when you are old, as long as they're working. The secret is whether your organ is working or not how old you are.
Right.
But the myths are quite a few, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
There is another myth which is very common. If I give eyes and it belongs to certain communities, not every community. If I give eyes, I shall be born without eyes in next birth. I just gently want to ask people who have this misconception, where did you read this? Which religious book tells you that you'll be born without eyes next time? In fact, it's the other way around. If you look at it another way, if you give eyes after death, it is quite possible that your eyes may be brighter, they might live longer, they might function longer, and they might be more beautiful.
But like my eyesight, for example, is weak. Would I still be able to donate them?
Of course, yes, because actually the eye part which is donated is cornea, which is transparent. And behind the cornea, you have iris, which gives you the color of eye. So the transparent part, which is the cornea, is taken and it's transplanted. Suppose there is a refractive error, which is what you are referring to, which can be corrected with the help of glasses.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect the cornea transplant very much.
Okay.
It's no problem at all because the refractive error can be corrected anyway,
Yeah.
can't it? So by use of glasses.
Yeah.
So it's not really relevant whether your eyesight is poor or not. Your cornea should be good. If you have a disease of cornea, and let's say trachoma, in trachoma, the basic thing is that viral infection makes cornea not transparent but opaque. If the cornea is opaque, then it can't be transplanted.
Okay.
But if the cornea is transparent and it's healthy, it can be transplanted without any problems.
Yeah.
So, coming back to some myths, some people believe that the whole of body should be given to God who created us. It's not a myth amongst everyone. Only some sections of society believe it. But really speaking, again, I would politely ask, which book have you got this part that the body should be donated in full? Frankly speaking, again, all the religious books that I have read, none of them say this. So it's a misconception proposed and carried on in some communities, but it's totally untrue. Let me give you an example. If unfortunately someone has got liver disease let's say liver cancer, or kidney disease, let's say kidney cancer, and the kidney has to be removed, well, the doctors will remove those parts which are faulty. So does that mean that your part has been removed, therefore God will refuse to accept you as the child after the death? Let's extend this further. If somebody has liver disease or kidney disease and that person passes away, and there is another person who passes away after death by donating kidney or liver. Now tell me, if God has to make one choice, who would God accept first? The person who died without kidney or liver because of disease, or the person who helped somebody to live life because of donation? Quite a thing which one should consider, but it's a myth. Admittedly, some diabetics who have had illness for a very long time, their parts will be affected. And if the parts are not working, then those parts are not going to be transplanted. But the fact that diabetics are carrying on and they are living, it means that there are lots of the organs in their body which are working well.
Yeah.
If that is the case, then surely the diabetics can give those organs if unfortunately they pass away.
Is there a process you have to go through to find out which organs are working and which are not? How do we know what can be given and what not?
Quite right. If it's a living donation, then the process of testing and retesting is quite prolonged one, because they need to have the reassurance that the part that they've donated, for example, one kidney or half of liver, is not going to reduce their life. There is no evidence that the life gets reduced by giving half a liver or one kidney. But that requires a long counseling by the experts in the field. So it takes quite a few months for testing that the organs are working and for counseling, so that they are absolutely sure in their own mind that by donation of one kidney or half a liver, they are really not going to have any bad effect and their life is not going to be reduced. If, on the other hand, the parts are given after death, before death, lots of tests are carried out in hospital anyway. They would tell us whether the kidney is working or not. They would tell us whether liver is working or not. And they would tell us about various other organs that can be donated. So in the hospital, when you are towards the end of life, all these tests are being normally done. So one would know that these parts are working very, very well.
Another thought process I've come through is some people believe that if a doctor knows that you're a donor and you are on life support, that they might switch off your life support because you're an organ donor. What is true in that?
This question actually gives me some sadness. Sadness because it's totally a misconception, but we thought that we had actually gone over this, because those people who go and talk about organ donation in the community, like my team and several other ambassadors, they take this myth very seriously. They've been saying it for a very long time that no doctor will ever do this, because the people who are treating a person who is ill are in a different team as opposed to the people who come to take the organ. There are two teams. Right. They are not connected with each other. If any doctor even thinks about doing this, that the instruments or let's say ventilator is switched off, that will be very, very wrong. And it is such a serious offense that General Medical Council will stop them practicing. It's not only unethical, it's illegal, doesn't happen. The people who are treating, they don't even know whether you are on organ donation register or not. They don't.
So how does that work then? At what point will you find out that somebody is on organ donation?
Quite right. How it works is that if people are so ill, they are generally in intensive care units. All the intensivists are prohibited for looking whether they are on the register or not, and they are also prohibited from talking about it, that they are on organ donation list. On the other hand, when they are so seriously ill, a point comes when they are generally put on ventilator, and if the death occurs, now that brain death can still keep heart and lungs going because of the machines, but the death, when it has occurred, that time, the specialized nurses called SNOD, which is specialized nurse or specialist nurse for organ donation, they are called in. The certification has been carried out by two independent doctors who have nothing to do with the hospital. And if the brain is dead, then certainly the specialist nurses will be able to tell the family that this is what has happened. They'll be given time to think. But the time is not in weeks and months. Time is very short. And that actually brings us to a fact that when you are in that moment of grief, basically the family have got different thought processes going on. So unless you have really told your family that this is what your wish is, they don't know whether you have signed the papers or not. And even signing the papers is not very important. What is really important is discussing with family that you wish to donate your organs. If they know your feelings, then of course it becomes easy. But if they have been broached with this subject only when the time is towards your death or the brain death has happened, that is a shocker. And in that shocked situation, many times families are not able to comprehend what's going on. So it's very important that people actually talk about this when they are in their normal senses and they are actually having normal conversation. Spain is leader in organ donation in whole of world. Why? One of the reasons is that in Spain, death is talked in a normal way. Just like we talk about the 3 courses dinner, death is also talked about in a very, very frank way. Because one thing which is sure after birth is death. It doesn't matter whether you are a human being, plant, or animal, but death is confirmed on the day you are born. Anybody who is born will die. But in this long journey, whatever the length is, if you talk about this very frankly, then you make the task very easy for those people who you have left in your family or friends. So really speaking, it's important, very important, that you don't leave it until that moment when you're going to be put on ventilator or you're already on ventilator, but you talk about it when you are having normal lifestyle.
As doctors, what would you do if the person who's passed away has expressed an interest in donating their organs, but the family doesn't agree with that and then is now stopping from that to happen? What happens next?
If the family refuses, then there is total no. Organs will not be taken.
Okay.
Let me say it again. Organs will not be taken for transplantation if families say no. We in UK have what is called presumed consent, and it's of 2 types. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but it's called soft and hard. Soft presumed consent is when the families are asked. In UK, it's soft presumed consent. There are some countries where it's hard presumed consent, like Austria and Spain, and there are some other countries as well. But in that, the treating doctors don't have to ask the families. There, the families and friends, especially families, become very sore, and they ask one question: are the organs of the body property of the government? Whose parts are they? If it's somebody who was our family member, we should have a say. And hard presumed consent, in our opinion, is not very productive. So we have gone with soft presumed consent. Families will be asked, and the organs will not be taken if the families refuse.
People worry about disfigurement after a donation. So, for example, if somebody has donated their skin or their corneas, they might feel that it's going to be a traumatic exposure to the people who've been left behind. How true is that?
That's inaccurate. As a matter of fact, we were involved in doing a lot of work in, I had set up a group here called Promoting Organ Donation in UK, and it ran for 8 years, and the secretary of that group was a professor in University of Wolverhampton. So she had carried out a research through one of her PhD students where this belief came along as a real concern in significant minority, only significant minority, but not in majority. But this significant minority had such a belief, but that's not true. If the eyes and skin are donated, it's called tissue, not organ donation. If the eyes are donated in UK, artificial eyes put in or inserted in that eye socket. So eyes are then closed. And I've never seen until now, I was a GP for 31 years in Wolverhampton. I've never seen anybody checking the eyes of a person who has died, whether it's her own eye or not, whether the eye is shining or not. And the new eye or the artificial eye which has been put in is glistening, is glaring, is beautiful. So really speaking, eyes is not relevant anyway. In skin, about 6 inches are removed from the outer side or inner side of thigh. And that 6-inch portion which is removed is the superficial portion of the skin.
Skin.
That is then taken away, and that 6 inches is covered by generally the clothes. So really speaking, nobody is going to lift the clothes from leg to check.
Yeah.
But it's not as if the whole skin is going to be taken away from you. That doesn't happen. But the skin can be kept for up to 5 years in a frozen way before it is actually given to somebody who needs it. But in addition to these two, skin and eye, which you asked, people might have concern that for taking the organs, for example, kidney or heart, they have to cut the chest or abdomen, which is true. But the doctors are taught that once this happens, the death has taken place, that person has to be treated exactly the same way as a live person for organ removal. One of my friends is a heart and lung surgeon in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. The team goes and they remove the organ, but then they put the stitches back, and no one knows, because wherever the stitches are, the body is going to be covered by the clothes. So why would anybody remove the clothes to check? There is no need. So frankly speaking, disfigurement is not applicable, not at all applicable.
Okay. You said you only take 6 inches. Why only 6 inches? I mean, that's a very small portion. How does that help?
That can be a lifesaver. 6 inches is small, but it's good enough for those people who need it. If unfortunately somebody has got burns of 80% or more, death is certain, except for one, when the skin can be transplanted. Now, as I said, skin can be kept in frozen state for 5 years and it can be transplanted. So 6 inches is good enough. And if you have lots of these 6 inches grafts, then people can do it. And it's good enough, really. So it works for very many people. But one thing which I wanted to say was that the skin may be of different color to yours. And if that is the case, over a period of time, the skin becomes the same color as the person who receives it.
Okay, but it can take a long time.
But does it matter really? Because quite frankly, if my life was in danger, I couldn't care less whether I'm given skin transplant by a person of different color, whether it's green, red or blue or black.
Yeah.
What is important is to be able to live.
Dr. Sharma, have you ever come across beliefs which say that certain cultures have better organs or stronger organs than some other cultures? Have you ever come across this at all?
I have, and it's very interesting. It's our lovely Afro-Caribbean friends, where in that community, some people, not all, some people believe that Afro-Caribbeans have got stronger body parts and therefore they don't need it. It's only the white people, and I don't know what their concept is about the Asians, but it's only white people who have got weak organs, so they need it and therefore they need to be on the register. Totally inaccurate. Absolutely inaccurate. I can tell you with a clear signal that this is not the case, because we know that Afro-Caribbeans' heart or kidneys, they function very well in whites, as the other way around happens. So white people can give organs to Afro-Caribbean people who have got black skin. But once you remove the skin, inside the blood is the same. It's red colored. And I can tell you heart functions in the same way. And as a doctor, I can also tell you that kidneys, liver, they function in the same way. And they don't look very different. They look the same way. So whilst it is a misbelief in some people only, and I learned it from my communication with them in churches and various other places where I do go, but that's really not the case.
So you said that we are all internally the same, really. But then why are some organs okay for some people but not okay for others? So I think the word is it compatibility, organ compatibility?
Yes.
Why does that happen then?
When the organs are put from one person to another, there are lots of cross matches which have to be done. I'll give you a simple example of blood group. If somebody has got blood group A and the donor organ has got blood group B, it will not be compatible. Although for kidney, you can wash that kidney for about 12 months or so by giving medication when the people are alive, and then it becomes easy. But that's relevant for live organ donation only.
Yeah.
However, the compatibility is not only in these blood groups of A, B, O, but it's also for rhesus negative and rhesus positive. So the blood group compatibility is just one thing. And the other thing is there are other very many intricate matters which really do come into play when the organs are transplanted. And these intricate matters are left to the specialist field. But the matchability is so very important that the organ, if it is mismatched, then it will not function. So lots of things which come into matching, cross matching, lot of things.
Yeah.
Even after all this, when the cross matching etc. is done and it's considered compatible and okay, when you come to live stories, you might have heard that somebody had kidney and the kidney failed after a certain length of time.
Yes.
You might have also come across that kidney or liver failed soon after being transplanted and they needed another transplant. I had a patient who had 3 liver transplants because the first 2, they just didn't agree. So despite everything that all precautions have been taken, everything has been shown to match outside, when you put the organs in, for some reason, body might decide to reject it. If that happens, then of course, you have to have another organ.
What do you mean when you say the body might reject it? What does that rejection look like?
Rejection means that the body has not accepted that organ and therefore that organ which has been put in is not doing the job it is designed to do. Let's say kidney. So there is kidney failure. So you had one kidney and with one kidney you can survive. So that one kidney was rejected by the body. So whatever is the job of kidney, getting the waste products out of body will not be done. And therefore you will have same problem as you had before the transplantation.
What does the recovery look like once transplant has happened?
If you have had the operation or if somebody has had the operation on kidney or liver, it will take some time. But it also depends on the part which has been transplanted. Recovery is not very different. When the people have had transplantation, within a few weeks, they are up and running. They're actually having normal life. But one thing which is sure is that they will need number of medications. A, to avoid rejection. B, to make sure that everything goes very well. So there are number of medications which are needed, especially soon after the operation. However, when the time passes and things are okay, then some of the medications can be stopped. But some medication will need to be taken for whole of the life.
But they can go on to live a full life.
Indeed.
As normal.
As normal person. And if they didn't tell you, you wouldn't know whether they've had transplantation.
Is it still a heavy topic in discussion in normal society?
It is. And I wish, as an ambassador, I wish it is true about everyone. But in significant number of people, and that does involve a high percentage, but in significant proportion, they don't want to talk about it because death is a taboo subject. That's particularly the case in many ethnic minorities. They don't want to talk about death. Well, frankly speaking, as I said earlier, death is inevitable after birth. So why not talk about it? And why not just treat it in a normal way? My wife and I, we just talk about death and we just laugh rather than being sad. Because although death is inevitable, we don't know when it's going to happen. But why not get prepared about it? Why not talk about it, discuss it frankly? Because if we did, then it is going to be very, very beneficial for other people who are going to receive it. Should you be in a position where you can give the organs or you can donate the organs? Doesn't happen for everybody because those people who are dying at home, the organs may not be in a position to be taken. They are not.
Oh, in a timely fashion, you mean?
In a timely fashion. But some tissues can be taken. For example, eyes and skin can be transplanted within 24 hours of death, even if the death has occurred at home. But you need to move fast to be able to get it done because basically, the people who are going to take the eyes away or skin away, they are really not waiting for a message to come through. They're not. But they do get there within 24 hours, depending on where you are. So, frankly speaking, it all depends on where you are and how quickly you move and are the conditions suitable where the organs can be removed for transplantation.
We have spoken a bit about organ and tissue. Let's talk about it a bit now. So could you explain what is the difference between organ donation and tissue donation? Not just in terms of what is the difference in definition, but in real life, what does that mean?
In real life, it doesn't mean anything because basically organs or tissues, both are donated and that's it. So for a normal person, it's not essential to know the difference between organ and tissue.
So when we agree to donate our organs, are we in effect saying that we are agreeing to donate both organ and tissue?
There are different columns. When you become an organ donor, you have to tick certain parts.
Right.
And then you can say, I agree for donating my heart, tick it, lungs, tick it, kidney, tick it, eyes, tick it, But basically, before you apply ticket, you must know that towards the end, there is one column where it says any organ or tissue. And if you tick that one, then you have covered everything. Our organs, they have got what is called ischemia time. Ischemia time means when you remove them, they are dead and gone and they are of no use. The ischemia time varies for various organs such as kidney or liver or other parts.
And then tissue?
Tissue, again, it varies. But generally speaking, eyes and skin can be taken within 24 hours. In some situations, even 36 hours is okay. But the other tissues such as tendons and heart valves, things like that, heart valves are avascular. There is no blood supply needed for heart valves. They are good enough for a long time. But it happens for the heart valves and tendons to be removed. It happens generally in hospital setting and the time is very variant. It's very interesting that if somebody has got a bone cancer, it's quite possible that you might want the bone to be replaced, and bone is a tissue, not organ. Now that bone is removed and you can actually talk to the mortuary assistants and say the length of or the height of this person was so much and the length of particular bone was so much. There was a particular one where femur, the thigh bone, had cancer. It was removed and the circular was sent to mortuary assistants. Within 1 week, mortuary assistants came back with an answer. They had talked to the family and the family agreed because the body was going to be burnt or buried anyway. So they agreed, femur was removed and it was successfully transplanted in another person.
I didn't realize you could donate bones.
Well, the number of organs which can be donated are phenomenal. Same applies for tissues. And it's increasing every day. It really is. Because technology is improving, our knowledge is improving, our methodology is improving. We are more capable. Therefore, the expertise gets built up. So it's happening all the time.
Is there anything currently that we are not able to donate? The medical field has not advanced as much?
Brain and spinal cord we are not able to donate because brain death when it happens, and same applies to spinal cord. Spinal cord and brain, the tissues, they die. They are not able to regenerate. So if you take a part of brain or spinal cord and put it in somebody else, they will not be able to function. So brain and spinal cord are not transplantable.
Dr. Shima, one question has come to me, and this is a little bit going to religious, cultural, philosophical thought process. We are all made up of energy. And yes, we have working organs and everything, but we think we have a soul as well. When we transplant one organ or tissue into another person, are we not carrying the energies from one person into another?
There is no proof that we are carrying energy from one person to another. There is no significant paper or medical paper that I have read which indicates the same. Frankly speaking, let's say soul of a person X has died and the soul has disappeared. What proof is there that the same soul goes into Y? It's belief, isn't it? Belief is different as opposed to evidence. There is no evidence at all. Interestingly, if you are a vegetarian and your organs are transplanted into a non-vegetarian, there is some evidence to suggest that the non-vegetarians, they become vegetarians.
Really?
Yes, there is some evidence to suggest that. Now, I'm watching that area with interest. I'm a vegetarian. I'm really watching that with interest.
Continuing to talk about organ donation and what it actually involves, there is some noise about uterus donation as well. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Those people who are not able to conceive because their uterus is deformed right from birth, the only treatment which can be helpful to them in having their own baby in their own body is uterus transplantation. Because you can have conception in vitro, outside the body, you can do the fertilization and you can actually have that baby. That has been going on for a number of years. But within your own body, having your own baby is different to the situation that I was talking about, in vitro fertilization. Now, uterus can be given if somebody is able to donate the uterus live or after death, and it starts functioning. It is a recent phenomenon. Not many uterus transplantations have been carried out in the whole world, but you might have seen on television a few weeks ago a live uterus transplantation was done and it was successful. To be successful, you have to have a baby who is actually, you have to have a conception for about 9 months and few days, 7 days. And then you need to wait for at least 1 year, 2 years that everything is okay. And this was the research done, or this was the quotation which was for somebody who had gone through that process. And after 2 years, they gave this news out through NHS Blood and Transplant, which is the major body for giving information about organ transplantation. Uterus is very interesting. We are watching it with great anxiety, how it happens. It has happened in other parts of the world. It has happened in UK as well. But as far as I know, the live uterus transplantation was the first one that was carried out here. In India, this has happened at least on 3 occasions that I know. But please remember that India has got a lot more people. In other words, their population is, huge. However, this has been, and it has also happened in many other countries who have been able to do successful uterus transplantation.
How old do I have to be a uterus donor?
For uterus to be viable, you would have uterus which belongs to productive age, which is something like 16 to 45 or 50. Because after 50, the menopause comes along in most ladies. And menopausal uterus may or may not function that well. Productive uterus, on the other hand, will function better. That's for sure, because it's common sense, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
So the chances are that if you have gone through your productive life and you don't want any more children, let us say you are in 40, 45, 50, where you have completed your family, then you are able to give uterus as a donation. If you are younger, you might change your mind and you might still want to have more babies. So which doctor would take your uterus away? That's not possible. It is not ethical either. But when you have completed your family, then it is, of course, is relevant and it's possible.
What impact does that leave on the donor? So if I donate my uterus, how does that leave me in my day-to-day living?
Interesting question. It really is. I'm not aware of any studies which will tell me the answer. However, I would think personally that if it was me, and I'm not a lady, I'm a man, but if it was me as a lady, I would be delighted that my organ has been given somewhere to some other person and it has been successful. I wouldn't really claim that baby to be mine, but I would certainly be delighted that in addition to this organ working in me, this worked in somebody else as well.
But would that baby be half mine?
Not at all.
In terms of genetics?
Genetics, I don't know, but donation, what is donation? Donation is something which you have
Charity.
given. Say you go to a church or temple and you give your £5 note. Would that be half of yours after giving? So why would it be different in uterus? If it is donation, then you have given it, haven't you? If you have given it, it doesn't belong to you. You have willingly given it.
Doctor, I've also come across news on hand transplant. What is that about? How does that work?
Hand means hand in lay language, but to us, the doctors, hand means we are talking about upper limb, because hand is only a part of the upper limb. Let me show you. So upper limb, this one, has got 3 parts. One is hand, second is up to here, and third is the whole upper limb. You can transplant either of these. In other words, you can transplant hand or up to elbow, or you can transplant up to shoulder. More than 100 hand or upper limb transplantations have taken place in whole of world. India has had a significant number of these upper limb transplantations because of interest of a surgeon who I met when I went to attend a conference. And it's very interesting that if the upper limb is given, then it can start functioning. Depending on which level, it can start functioning. But if you give the whole of upper limb, then it takes about 12 months, but it starts functioning. Right. Now, who would you give upper limb to? Those people who are born without upper limb. So, since birth, they have never had upper limbs. Or those people who have lost upper limb because of some injury or trauma, which can be accidental, or you may be in army and you might have lost the upper limb. If that is the case, then you will need to qualify. But one thing which comes to my mind is that there was a person, again in India, where the upper limb was needed by a Muslim because of the war injury. It was donated by a Hindu family and a Christian doctor transplanted the upper limb. What can be better example of humanity than this? But it can be made to function. You imagine somebody who has given hope, because basically there is really no medication or operation which is going to do the job other than transplantation. To be able to have an upper limb is absolutely amazing. I've got a picture and I wish I could show you, but in that picture, when the upper limb was given by a Hindu person to a Muslim gentleman, The Muslim gentleman was folding hands like this, and the Hindu family was standing with him. Very emotional, because wife and family, they felt this gentleman can function well because of what we decided to donate.
And obviously, because it is not a liver or a kidney, it was only after death that it could be done.
Indeed it is, absolutely. And it's visible as well, as it would be in terms of skin. Skin could be visible because it could be in covered parts, it may not be in covered parts. And the visibility does give a different message. But I think it's phenomenal. It really is absolute blessing to be in a situation where the body part after death is going to be burnt or buried. And before burying or burning it, this is given to somebody. That's phenomenal. It's huge. It's massive. Frankly speaking, I need to repeat this, sorry, but this is the best example of humanity that you can come across.
Donating your organs or your tissues, especially after your loved one has passed away, does that leave an impact on the donor family?
It invariably does. One impact is that I should do more because these people, they have seen the function of organs in another person. They also know that the organs are never manufactured in factory. So organs can only come from the human body live in some cases or after death. So one effect is that they would say, well, I should do more to save human beings. Another fact is that they're very proud. They really are, because their donation has actually saved life or improved the quality of life in some people. There is an organization called Donor Family Network. They actually take very, very good part in arranging the transplant games. Transplant games are the games which are organized for the recipients by the Donor Family Network, and they do a great job because actually they show, I have been to some of the transplant games. It's fantastic to be able to watch some of these people playing a game. Transplant games happen in many countries. In fact, one of my acquaintances wants to arrange World Transplant Games in UK. Transplant games in UK are arranged in different areas so that the people can participate.
Of course.
So there may be some other things which I've not been able to cover because this is not my subject.
Of course.
But I've only seen what I can
Of course.
say quite authentically, yes.
Dr. Sharma, you've been an ambassador for organ donation. So obviously you would have come across a lot of donor family. Have you found a negative impact of organ donation in the donor family?
Family means the next of kin, and that could be mother, father, brother, or whoever. There's always a debate within family, always. And I'm very sorry to say this, that families have got conflicting opinions within the family. All the family are never ever united. All the family members, when they go through the tussle, they get into two parts. Significant part of the family would say yes, and significant part will say no. So there are two camps. Yes and no camp have got a conflict. And their arguments are, no, what's the point of giving organs? They have different views. And for one reason or another, they are in no camp. Then many are in yes camp. And many times the no camp prevails because they say that if you give organs, then you can't take the organ back. But if you don't give organ, there is nothing to worry. Archbishop of Canterbury had a study in UK in which he showed that the people who refuse to give organs, they have a great guilt feeling which comes along after 12 months or so. And they have to live with that guilt that we stopped somebody to be alive, which would have happened if we were not in that camp. I think that's very significant. So exactly opposite to what you are asking. In addition to what you said, there is an evidence that the guilt feeling comes along.
If you don't donate.
If you don't donate. Because there's a simple fact, isn't it? That if somebody wants to do some good thing and you stop him or her doing it, you are going to regret it. You may not regret it the same day. Someday it'll come to bite you and say, well, you were the mechanism through which obstruction happened to the donation. And that's not a very nice feeling to live with. It also brings me to a very important fact. In UK, this yes and no camp tussle means that it has been going on for some time. And roughly about 40% of white families, they say no even when the people were on organ donation register. In ethnic minorities, this number rises to 60%. Families saying no even when the person was on organ donation register. Now that's very important. Why? We believe that if this function was reduced, and let's say all the family said yes, the waiting list will crumble. It may even get abolished. Is that significant? It has massive impact on the waiting list. It really means a lot. So if the listeners of this podcast can take one message away, that is, please do not refuse. If your family, friend, or somebody who you know wanted to donate organs, please don't refuse. You may have to live with that guilt. And please remember that if you don't refuse, one person after death can save life of 8 people, or up to 8 people can be saved. That is very significant.
I've got a couple of questions that come straight from what we just discussed and talked about. Why do we find certain ethnic groups or certain sector of people saying no more to organ donation than others?
It's misbeliefs and myths. You talked about one myth, which was whole body has to be returned. Which book tells you that? And I have challenged some of the people. Organ donation is not mentioned in Quran. It's not mentioned in other holy books like Bible, Gita, Quran, Ramayana or Mahabharata. Because let's be honest, organ donation is about 75, 76 years old. All the religions are more than 550 years old, and most older than that, thousands of years old. The youngest religion is Sikh religion, which is 550 years old. When these religions or religious books were written, organ donation was not known. It was never on the horizon. How could they talk about organ donation? How could they stop people from donating organs? It was not possible. It still is not. So it's our impression, it's our philosophy, it's our misinformation many times which stops us giving, and we are quoting religion in a wrong way, I think, because it doesn't matter what religion you have, maybe Christian, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, or whatever else, Jew, Jain. There is one religion which is all above all these religions, and that religion is humanity.
The other question I had is, do we provide any mental health support or well-being support to the family members of the donor?
Indeed, a lot is available. It's not very well known because not everybody needs it, but a lot of help is available, and it's given to all the people who need it. Many people say that it should be available instantly. There is no need, there is no evidence to say that instant help is of any help, because when the death happens, or death of anyone, people have to recover, and generally speaking, it takes about 3 years for full recovery. That's an average. Average means that some people will recover in 2 years, some people will recover in 4 years, but it's years. So the help that is needed is in terms of months and years, and the support is definitely available. Many people don't need it. Many people find it a great support to be able to promote organ donation, because really to them it's therapy, it's treatment when they talk about it. Because whenever death happens, I think when we visit the relatives, don't we have this feeling that there should be emotional catharsis? What that means is that they should be able to talk frankly about that.
Yeah.
So we provide a listening ear.
Yeah.
In that listening ear scenario, imagine donor family network person, the family which has donated organs of a person. Well, that's what exactly is happening. By promoting this cause, they are having lots of listening ears.
I would like to come back to the presumed consent bit now. So what is presumed consent? I know you spoke about hard yes and soft yes, and so if you can explain a little bit and maybe compare it to how it is happening maybe somewhere else in the world.
Good question and very relevant. There are 2 ways of giving consent. One is voluntarily agreeing that I shall give my organs to whoever needs it. That's called opting in. Another one is opting out. Opting out means that if that is the scenario that the organs will be taken, you say, no, I don't want to take part in that. So opting in is voluntarily saying, yes, I want it, I have opted in. Opting out is the organs will be taken, I don't want that. If you don't want it, then it's called opting out. Opting out is presumed consent. In presumed consent, it is presumed that the organs will be taken, and you are saying no to that. Now, so presumed consent has got 2 elements, hasn't it? One is that the body parts will be removed, whether you want their removal or not. And the second is saying, no, I don't want it. That's what soft and hard presumed consent is all about. Soft presumed consent is when you will not be there, a person who dies will not be there to tell what is the wish. Although that person may have written and that person may have agreed to be an organ donor, but unless that person has spoken to the family, nobody will know what was in his or her mind. The second part is the hard presumed consent, which happens in, as I said earlier on, in Austria and Spain and some other countries. The evidence is that if you presume that you are having a presumed consent, a soft situation where the families will be asked, that is more successful and that is the way to go about. But if you then presume that the hard presumed consent is there, the difference is really not phenomenal. Let me just read something out to you. We had this situation where there was a prime minister in Conservative Party who announced suddenly that we are going to go in from opting in, which is voluntary, to presumed consent, which is involuntary. Now, presumed consent or opt-out system was introduced in England in May 2020, whereas in Wales it became a law in December 2015. So Wales were a little ahead of England in presumed consent. So what's the evidence? The evidence is that when Wales went from opting in voluntary to presumed consent, in first year the waiting list fell significantly. That happened because people assumed that the body parts are going to be taken anyway, so why say no? After 1 year, the waiting list started rising again, and within 2 to 3 years, it was exactly back to where it was. So 5 years ahead of England, Wales had this situation. Part of that was because first year, people wrongly believed that the organs will be taken. Families were going to be asked, but they said whether we think yes or no, the organs will be taken, so why not say yes? First year, there was a lot on television, lot in media, and that was misunderstood by many people. After first year, they understood that we can say no, and they started saying no. So the general feeling in population started declining, whereas in professionals, it started increasing after 1 year. So they understood, the people who are doctors and nurses connected with this transplantation, they understood it very well after 12 months. So they were really trying to persuade people, but their persuasion didn't work. There was another country, Brazil, I think, where transfer from opting in to presumed consent had a difference of 0.1%, which is nothing, it's insignificant. And the people, they turned against government, and the government had to go back from presumed consent to opting in. What does that mean? In simple terms, what it means is that presumed consent alone is not a panacea. It's not going to work in every country. It won't. Unless and until there are enough provisions for presumed consent to be associated with proper literature, proper media campaigns, proper support for the families, proper information, it won't work. It's more or less the same for England. It has been going on since 2020. People, even now, I come across lots of people who believe that the organs will be taken anyway. So what's the point of signing in? What's the point of saying I'm willing to donate? Well, the truth is that yes, families will be asked. But if you sign in, you are giving a help to the family because you are expressing your wish. You will not be there to defend yourself. The money or the important things that you have in life, which you might have earned, such as your house or whatever else, you can give to anyone you want. And you can write in the will, this much portion of my belongings should go to X, this much of my belongings should go to Y, and so on. And you can give it to anybody you want. And it'll be carried out. If it's written, it'll be carried out. Why is that not the case in organs? If I've written I'm willing to be an organ donor, why should it not be carried out? I think there are two simple reasons why it is not carried out. One, that after death, the body is not property of anyone. So nobody can say this is my property, even if it's next of kin. The second thing is, there is nothing to reinforce. For example, will be reinforced by law. And people are interested in having money or a part of it. So they'll be fighting over it and they'll be producing the will, and there are courts to impose that. There are no courts for this to be imposed or made it functional. Combine this with the situation where some people have said, I want to donate parts of my body, and there is nobody who can oversee it. So whatever my wish is, it is not going to be carried through,
Yeah.
particularly if the families say no.
Yeah.
This is why we really have very important message. And again, this is one of the points to be taken away by the listeners of this podcast. Please, 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 if you are an organ donor, talk to your families. If you have signed, it will be on National Health Register. The information will be available to those people who are authorized to retrieve this information. For example, you have signed this in England, and unfortunately your death happens in Wales, Scotland, or somewhere else. On national health data, the doctors who are authorized to look at it, they will know after your death that this was your wish. But they are in the hands of your family. So please talk to family members that this is your wish.
I'm going to come to the confidentiality part now.
Yes.
So is the identity of the receiver, is it kept confidential?
Yes, it is kept confidential, and this is a matter which is currently in debate. And I'll explain to you what the debate is about. The confidentiality is supreme. So let us say somebody's eyes are donated to another person. And by the way, the eyes are very unique because you can remove the superficial part of cornea and the deeper part of cornea in two different ones. So your two eyes could actually give eyesight to 4 people. So the person who has donated the eye, or for that matter another organ, is not here. That person, let's say, is dead. Now in deceased donation, this part who received the organs is kept totally confidential. If the family of the recipient want to convey their gratitude to the donor family, they can write a card or they can write a message, and that message can be given to the donor family by the staff or specialist nurse of organ donation, which is called SNOD. SNODs know where did the eye or other parts of the body went, so they can convey your message to the donor family. Donor families generally are very thankful that there are some grateful people, and it's uplifting because sometimes the recipient families have given such messages every year, and those cards are, or those messages are relayed to the donor family. So the debate is, why should the confidentiality not be broken? The conclusion has not been reached as yet. I personally think that by asking family, what would you wish? The confidentiality should be broken where the family say, we are happy for this to happen. But again, I'm in the hands of experts, and let's see what the people say. The debate carries on.
Which family are you talking to, the donor family or the
Donor
recipient family?
Donor family. Because as far as recipients are concerned, most of them want to know where did the organ come from. But they are not told because of the confidentiality clause at this moment in UK. And in different countries it's different.
It's different. Dr. Sharma, there are some ethical questions as well around, obviously, donation. Some countries like Iran have incentivized the process. What's your take on this?
Incentivization is a very complicated situation and very complicated subject. But let's make it simple. If you do financial incentivization, that people who donate, the families will be given X, Y, or Z amount of money. That money, doesn't matter what it is, will not be enough for many. Most people would want more. So financial incentivization is really not a very good situation, because in financial incentivization, whatever you do, whatever amount of money you give is not going to be enough. You can have other bits of incentivization, such as the jobs being given to family members, particularly relevant in India, where the jobs are given and the preferential treatment is given to those people who are members of the families who donated. Well, that may well be helpful, but not very helpful, because actually whatever job you give, the person may or may not want to do, or person may say it's not suitable. We have found that it's a slippery slope. It really is a slippery slope. It doesn't matter what financial or other incentivization you do, it's never going to be enough for those people who receive it. If that is the case, you're never going to be in a situation to satisfy them. What is the point of starting it? There are some countries where I know that incentivization, such as if you belong to a family who have donated, suppose you are in a situation where you need an organ. you'll be given priority. That may make sense to some people because, quite frankly, if families have donated, then the least which can be done is to give priority to those people who've had the courage of donating. Makes sense. But again, it's a debatable situation. In general, the people who are experts in transplantation and the people who are connected with organ donation, there is a general agreement that financial or otherwise incentivization, it doesn't work. Donation is donation. And I come to my original feeling, where if you had £5 note, which you gave to a church, temple, or a beggar, or somebody who you thought was much more deserving, you have given that £5. It doesn't belong to you anymore.
It's not a business. It's not a transaction.
It's not a transaction or business.
donation.
It is donation. And donation is true donation when it's given without any selfish motive.
We very briefly talked about a Commonwealth project related to organ donation. What is this about?
Well, that's a subject which is very close to my heart. You will see why. About 7 years ago, because of our success in MOU, which is Memorandum of Understanding, between Mohan Foundation and NHSBT, which is National Health Service Blood and Transplant, which is a body functioning here in our country here. I felt that this MOU, which had been very successful and had brought lots of advantages to England as well as India, we could actually expand these good points to many other countries which are in Commonwealth. Now, Commonwealth have got 56 member countries. We worked hard on it. There was a group which was created, and it was created with the help of NHS Blood and Transplant, and there were lots of other volunteers from various walks of life. They came along and joined us and helped us. It took us 3 years to launch this project called Commonwealth Tribute to Life. So it was an MOU essentially to increase the understanding between various countries. Some are way ahead of others in one or the other part of transplantation. For example, UK is a leader in the whole world for DCD, which is deceased cardiology death. In other words, heart stops, as opposed to DBD, which is deceased brain death.
Okay.
So deceased brain death is known to many, many countries. Everybody knows about this in transplantation field. But DCD, which is heart stopping, is a relatively newer concept. But UK is leader in the whole world. But UK is not a leader in other fields. And we can, by talking, by discussing, we can learn from other countries. If all of us started talking to each other, it will be benefiting everyone. You can argue and say everything is on websites, so why don't you go on the websites? True, yes, you can look at the websites, but the websites are like oceans. The deeper you go, better you will find. But even websites fail to tell you how did you get there. So the reasons for your success are not written on websites. It's written what you achieved, but how did you achieve it is lacking. If you had contacts, then those can be discussed between the contacts, and you can actually have good practices which are shared between countries. Now, this sharing will make everybody rich because the country which gives it doesn't become any poorer by giving, but the country which receives it becomes much more rich because they have received it. We believe that by having this Commonwealth Tribute to Life, we will be able to save thousands of lives. So this project called Commonwealth Tribute to Life was launched 4 years ago on Commonwealth Day, and it was launched by the Health Minister of the country. In last 4 years, we have achieved a lot. We have achieved in many, many functions which never existed before. We have done webinars. We have started talking to each other. We have got interactions between various member countries going on because they don't really have to talk to us in UK. They can benefit by talking to each other. And conceivably, Asian countries may have something different in common as opposed to European countries.
Yes.
And Australia and New Zealand may have something different, which is common to them, but it is not relevant to Africa. So we had coordinators in each continent, and these coordinators have been appointed, or they have willingly agreed to take this matter further. And we think already we have been successful in parting the messages and giving the messages to those people who are professionals. But we are hungry. We still don't want to stop. It is there for 5 years. 4 years have passed. And I've got absolutely no doubt in my mind that once 5 years are completed, it will be ratified, because nobody has got anything to lose. We don't talk about exchange of money. Exchange of money is not relevant, and we are totally ethical. We have got Istanbul ethical guidelines which are being practiced, and those are the best ethical guidelines that you can have in the whole world. We will also not talk about the transportation of organs from one country to another, because that's a slippery slope. If you could talk about transportation, that can lead to money being played in, and that's a problem. If you have self-sufficiency, which is very, very difficult to achieve, you have as many organs available as are needed, that'll be fantastic. That's our goal. But that can be achieved only if we all start talking to each other and have good practices. So we are very proud that we have achieved it in UK, and NHSBT is the key organization which has really helped us. Various layers of this are there, and there's a board, and the board is to oversee the functionality of all this. And I'm hugely privileged to be the chairman of that board.
You just mentioned transportation of organ, and you don't indulge in that because that's where a lot of questions may come up. I am an organ donor. I'm still alive, but I'm traveling. I'm in one of these Commonwealth countries, and unfortunately I die. But I have expressed that I want to be an organ donor. How does that work in that situation?
It's very simple. Wherever the death occurs, the laws of that country will prevail. Somebody decided that they wish to become organ donor in country X, but the death occurs in Y, the legal framework of country Y will prevail. They will use the organs with the permission of the families, yes.
Dr. Sharma, you mentioned pre-recording about a Bentley story which shows the importance of organ donation. Would you like to narrate that to us?
Yeah, sure, happy to. There was a person who was multimillionaire. In fact, he was multi-billionaire in another country, not in UK. And he decided to go through the media and said to people that he is going to bury one of his most expensive cars, the Bentley. People thought he has gone out of his mind. So he decided the time and the day. He advertised it very widely. So lots of people came to see, why is this foolish thing going to happen? Doesn't make any sense. So hundreds of people were gathered, and this gentleman who had got all the things ready, in other words, he had got the grave to be dug, he had got a Bentley car, he had got a particular machinery which will lift the car up and put it in that dug grave. So time came, and then he stopped and said this, "You must have thought that I've gone mad. Why would I bury my Bentley which has cost me so much of money?" If you think about it, that's what exactly we are doing when we are burying heart or lungs or kidneys, which can totally be used, and they are invaluable. You cannot put any value on them. But that's what we are exactly doing. So I'm not going to bury my Bentley, and you stop burying your organs, which can be used somewhere else.
Yeah, the perfectly working organs and tissues that can be used elsewhere. So let's come to the impact then, actually, the donation of organs and tissues have. Have you got any live example of how organ donation, tissue donation has helped recipients?
Lots and lots of them. As a matter of fact, so many that it's difficult to quantify them. I've known lots and lots of families where the people were very ill and they became functional again. I've known people where things have actually turned hopeless and they have thought about committing suicide because the situation is really that bad. But after transplantation, they started functioning well. They are healthy. One of my neighbors was very, very ill. And I used to see the ambulance coming to that particular house very frequently because that person was very ill. And the lady was a diabetic and she was in bad situation. She had got just a few weeks to live. But then she was lucky to have transplantation of kidney as well as pancreas. The diabetes got resolved. She was a totally different person because things have changed. But things have not changed for her alone. It's the whole family where the things have changed.
You know, you mentioned previously that one person can impact or save 8 lives. Is that the true number?
Up to 8 lives, that's
Up to
correct.
8 lives. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, you've got 1 heart, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, pancreas, intestines. Intestines can be life-saving. So all these can be retrieved from one person. But if you talk about tissue, then it gets extended. It really does. Because tissue can save the functioning of life, not the life, because somebody who didn't have this eyesight, let's say he or she gains eyesight, well, the life is still going to carry on with or without. But nevertheless, look at the availability of functions. Look at the eyesight coming back, and then actually this person being able to do lots and lots of things. The quality of life is enhanced phenomenally. So there is a difference between saving life and the quality of life being improved. Tissues are generally able to improve the quality of life, except with skin, where I said earlier that if 80% of burns are there, then the life is impossible. Death is inevitable unless the skin transplantation is done. So skin can serve both the purposes, can enhance the quality of life, or it can save the life. So up to 8% lives can be benefited or saved by one person trying to give organs.
Let me come to what this means for you, because I've seen that you have spoken about this with such passion today. I've seen you've got emotional about certain topics as well as we've gone through our discussion, and you have been an ambassador for organ donation for such a long time now. Why does this matter to you so much?
Well, it's quite simple. If we can't make any difference to the lives of those people we are living with, then life is okay for you, but what did you do for society? If you are able to cause enthusiasm, if you are able to inspire people in being able to do something, particularly if you are able to inspire people where it doesn't cost you any money. After death, if the organs are transplanted, it doesn't cost you any money at all. You are not losing anything. Then why not do such a thing? So to make a difference in the society, you need to be able to do something. And that's something, it came from my father, because he said that those people who are able to help others, they are doing a good job. We all know it. But he said, do something which will make a difference. To be able to make a difference is really unique. But nevertheless, it means a lot to me.
Dr. Sharma, what got you interested in organ donation?
Several years ago, when I had just come to the country and was senior house officer in hospital, I came across a couple where the marital disharmony meant that the person who I was looking after had taken an overdose. He wanted to die, so he had himself injected insulin in large proportion. And whilst I was looking after the intensive care in hospital, I knew that this person who was a doctor and had wanted seriously, he had wanted to kill himself. He will not survive. So I suggested to the consultant, how about the organs? Because this gentleman is not going to make it. Interestingly, his wife was also a doctor. The consultant said, who is going to approach both? The man himself is unconscious. The wife is doctor, but she is in big grief. I would think that this is actually going to be extremely difficult. So I said, could I approach? I talked to the wife. She willingly agreed. So the organs of this doctor who wanted to kill himself were flown several years ago. I'm talking about 1978. They were flown to different parts of Europe. And I don't know how many people benefited because of confidentiality. They won't tell me. But nevertheless, he was a young doctor who was diabetic, but many of his organs were functioning. And many people would have survived out of this sad, tragic situation. So I thought to myself that if I can make a difference, would it not be a good idea to talk about it to various people, talk about it after acquiring knowledge? So for many years, I just studied organ donation. I wanted to grab the information wherever it came from. And after a period of time, the whole thing actually, the penny dropped.
You mentioned something about murdering my father.
Yes.
What is that?
It's a rare sort of thing which I came across. I was looking after a person who was very closely known to me, talked about the organ donation, as you would expect, to the family. And the family were not very comfortable. And the daughter of that person said something which will always stick in my mind. And it has happened on a rare occasion, but it has happened to me. She said, well, if I switch the ventilator off of my father, would I not be a murderer of my father? I said, he's brain dead. He's not going to come back. So why would you be classed as murderer? You can't cause death of a person who's already dead. He's not going to come back. But she found it very difficult to understand the concept of brain death because she had not had the exposure. And at that particular time of grief, when the father was on ventilator, he was on last legs, he had brain death, it was very difficult to start. But am I murdering my father? It sticks out in my mind. Doesn't happen very often, but it has happened to me.
Is that not something that would also be covered or should be covered with people in their normal day-to-day discussions with their family, that if ever I'm in a situation where I'm on a ventilator and I can't decide, switch it off, basically?
Well, frankly speaking, unless it has been discussed several times, it doesn't happen.
What is the first step to become an organ donor?
It's quite simple. You can actually have an organ donation form, complete it, and send it back to either NHS BT, which is NHS Blood and Transplant. It doesn't cost you any money for posting because it's free post. Or alternatively, you can go online. Going online is very easy. And I have tried it. It takes 30 seconds in answering the questions. It's that simple. What you can do is go on to line and look up for organ donation UK, because organ donation exists in USA, UK, and many other countries.
Yeah.
So organ donation and UK and brings you to the website of NHS. If you can remember these words, organ donation and UK, you'll go there and it's written there, how to become an organ donor. Click that one, and 30 seconds you are done. Many people, they are asked at the time of passing driving, because when you pass driving, the question is asked. Interestingly, when you go to a new GP, if you've had to change the GP, the form that you are asked to complete also has got on its back about organ donation. And many people leave it vacant because you don't have to fill that form. But there are various methods of completing the form. But more important than completing the form, talk to the family. If you don't talk to the family, it's very likely that your wishes will not be carried through.
How should we raise awareness about organ and tissue donation?
Talk about it, because if you talk about it in small groups, large groups, talking is the main thing. Talking is much more effective in smaller groups, because in smaller groups, people have less hesitation in asking questions. When you give a talk in large group, it has got its benefit, because some people would listen, some people would listen very, very carefully. So it's useful, but not many people would ask questions because they think, am I being seen as a fool in asking this question? Well, I have to say, there is no question which is wrong. Answers can be wrong, but the questions cannot be wrong. So talk about it, and talk in many, many ways. Let the people ask you questions. If you are able to answer those questions, answer only those questions which you are able to. Do not answer, don't even attempt to answer those questions where you are not qualified. If it is outside your territory, there is no hesitation in saying, well, sorry, this is outside my expertise, but I can tell you somebody who will know about it. So you can put them in the right direction.
Whose responsibility should this be?
Everybody's, because actually the humanity exists in everyone. Everyone. If you think that by paying some money we can get it done, I want you to rethink, because no amount of money is going to be successful. If you talk about humanity, it's much more likely to be successful, because as an ambassador, I don't get paid. I don't wish to be paid either. But as an ambassador, I have a passion. I can't expect everybody to be passionate to the same extent as me. I can't expect that anyone would want to do it the way I personally do it. I personally do it because it gives me inner satisfaction.
I'm not a medical person though, Dr. Sharma. What right have I got to be talking about it?
You've got every right. As a matter of fact, you might be listened more carefully than I would be, because people who listen to me, they'll say, oh, he will say that, won't he? Not true, because not many doctors are aware of our transplantation as much as they should know, because I can't blame them. They have got their own speciality. In their own speciality, they've got a lot of time which has to be spent or absorbed or used in furthering their knowledge. So there is no need for them to talk about transplantation. Various surveys have showed that the level of knowledge in doctors who are not connected with transplantation is as low as it is in general public. So if you talk about transplantation, I can think that you will be much more successful than I am. Many of our ambassadors who are there and doing a great job are either recipients or members of donor family network. They are not doctors. In fact, it's fair to say that I'm the only ambassador who is a doctor. All other ambassadors are non-medical. So really, everybody is entitled to talk about it.
Do you think it is important to honor donor family, and why?
I think it is important to honor the donor family because they have done a humanitarian act without any reward, being wanted or hoped for. If you do that, you'll inspire X number of people. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond. If you throw a pebble in pond, the waves are generated. But two things decide those waves, how long will they last and how far they'll reach. One is the size of the pebble, and second is the speed with which the pebble is thrown. Well, if you decide to honor a donor family, you're going to talk about it. More importantly, he or she is going to talk about it. And they have got a badge. Donor Family Network have designed a badge. Quite a few times that's the starting point, because people say, what is this?
I'm assuming you are going to be an organ donor.
I have signed an organ donor form as back as 40 plus years. The only thing is I haven't died yet.
And
But
I'm assuming that this is a topic that you have well discussed within your family.
absolutely. My wife, my children, they know my interest in organ donation.
Dr. Sharma, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today. I have learned a lot about this whole topic. It is a topic which is very close to my heart personally as well. And I think hearing you say that each and every one of us has a right, responsibility and duty to talk about this topic gives me the permission to go and then talk about it as well with everybody I come across in my life and I come in contact with. So thank you so much. But just before we end, I do ask all my guests to end the podcast on a nice, positive message. It could be a message for me, it could be for your family, the wider world. So if you don't mind, just leaving a message here, and I will put that on the board behind you.
Message is very simple. Be human. Help others. If it is okay to accept, it's okay to give. Think about organ donation.
That is absolutely perfect. Dr. Sharma, thank you once again so much for being here, and I wish you all the very best.
I'm very grateful to you for inviting me to talk about something that I'm passionate about. Thank you so very much. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Organ donation saves lives. Talk to your family, share your wishes, and keep the conversation going. Thank you to the donor families whose kindness brings hope to so many. If you found the episode useful, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you have a story to share and want to take part, please scan the QR code on the screen. Until next time, stay unbroken.